Now this is what I'm here to fix, a small area in the middle of our tablecloth, damaged by the corner of a hot pizza tray. And in this short video, I'll be sharing how I achieved an almost invisible mend, starting by slipping a cutting mat under the offending area, as it's here in situ that we're going to make a patch. Now fortunately I've got an offcut left over when I trimmed the cloth to size, and hopefully you too will have an inch or two that won't be missed from either the ends or the sides of yours. We'll obviously need enough to cover the damage, but depending on the pattern, also enough to get a repeat, which we want to line up with the tablecloth below, and when reasonably happy, tape in place. Of course this is much easier with something plain, but even then there might be some textures that need lining up. What we want is our patch to be relatively small, but of course bigger than the damage, and it's quite useful to have taken a photo of the area, so we can check later. But for now I'm making a pretty good estimate of where the edges need to be, and marking them with my masking tape, which will also hold the patch in place, ready for cutting. We want this to be as precise as possible, so I'm treating myself to a brand new blade, obviously being very careful when fitting. Then with my ruler along the edge of the tape, which I know marks the side of the damaged area, I can slice through both layers of vinyl, the patch and my tablecloth below. I'm holding the ruler a bit awkwardly here, and I would normally cut in the opposite direction, but I wanted you to see what's going on rather than the back of my hand, and with that edge done, we can go on to the other side. Before cutting, I just want to double check with my photo, and I can see that the damaged area comes up nearly to the edge of one of the flowers, so I want to allow for a little more on that side, adjusting the ruler so I cut through some of the tape as well. I'm also deliberately making an irregular shape, as this will make it much easier to line up when we're done, with absolutely no chance of getting it the wrong way round. It also makes it more difficult to spot, even if we don't get the pattern perfectly aligned. And with all four sides cut, my patch just lifts out, leaving the taped surround behind. And as we've cut through both layers, we've got an identical shaped hole in the tablecloth itself, into which the patch can drop, the pattern lining up nicely. Then it's job done, we can remove all the masking tape, the bits off the patch, and all the stuff attached to the tablecloth, bringing with it the leftover frame, which we can throw away, leaving just patch and hole, which while not 100% perfect, line up well enough. This will actually improve when we come on to the next stage, for which we need to flip over our tablecloth. Now there are numerous ways of attaching our patch, but instead of tape or glue, I'll be using heat, applied by a soldering iron. And here I must give the usual warnings to take great care not to burn yourself or your surfaces, and to help with this I've got a silicone soldering mat, although anything heat resistant like a ceramic tile would do the job just as well, but whatever it is needs to go completely under the patch area, so I'm just turning my soldering mat so the high heat resistant oval is long ways underneath the hole, into which we can place our patch. And here's why I cut an irregular shape, as even though we can't see the top surface, we know the pattern is going to line up. Then with a little bit of tape just to hold one of the edges, we can get to work. My soldering iron is nothing fancy, but it does have temperature control, which I want on the lowest setting, but even then still very hot, so a ceramic coaster will help protect my surface. Then it's a case of very gently melting the vinyl along the join. My soldering tip is the broadest I had in the set, and fortunately unused, so I didn't have to clean it first. My technique is to barely touch the surface, and for the briefest possible time, tacking along the edge first, so I'm sure everything lines up properly, before filling in the gaps with a wiggly motion, again barely touching the surface, keeping the tip constantly on the move, so it doesn't linger in the same place where it will start to burn. You can see I've largely achieved this, but I do have some black bits, just on the right side of being burnt. The boundary between too much and too little is very narrow, and quite hard to gauge, so I very much recommend practicing on some offcuts first. Then, with most of three sides done, we can take off the tape at the end, and melt together the last bits, holding the edges flat if needed, repeating the process, tacking first, and then filling in the gaps. Even at this late stage it pays to take your time, and I made the mistake of rushing, and you can clearly see that there are more burnt bits on my final join, but even so they'll be barely visible on the other side. Then, having checked all my seams are nicely fused, I just want to cover the patch with a piece of my tape, purely for cosmetic appearance. The tape doesn't contribute to the mend itself, so it really doesn't matter what sort you use. Just avoid anything too thick that would create a raised area behind the patch when we've turned everything the right way round again. Now for the first time we can see our patch from the top side. Our pattern matches up pretty well, and the seams mostly pretty near invisible, So time to slip out the mats and spread out the tablecloth for a game of Spot the Repair. Knowing roughly where it is helps, but even so, it's quite well hidden. The seams are a little way off being completely invisible, but good enough, even the one I burnt slightly at the end. Everyone else doesn't know there's a repair to find, so they won't even be looking. And if anyone does spot it, you can proudly say, I mended that myself.